Castlevania second season? What about it? Not that show. I'll get back to that show one day. Welcome guys, my name is Hunter, and today we're going to be talking about the second season of Castlevania. I have been a fan of Castlevania for quite some time, and that's mainly thanks to the AVGN himself, James Rolfe. In his show, Angry Video Game Nerd, he did 4 episodes involving Castlevania, from the original one up to Symphony of the Night, and talking about some more modern ones for the DS, and even Lord of Shadow, or whatever it is, talking about why he loves the Castlevania games, and it got me thinking of wanting to try it. So, when I was old enough, I decided to buy an NES, as well as some of the Castlevania games, and I played them, and I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I even downloaded Symphony of the Night from my Xbox. Really love that one. I've played it multiple times, I've beaten it multiple times. It's one of the few Castlevania games I've actually beaten, aside from Aria of Sorrow and Rondo of Blood. But I don't want to diverge too much, I'll get to all this stuff later. Let's talk about the series that came onto Netflix. Well, last year, the first 4 episodes of Season 1 came onto Netflix, 40 minutes each, and they were all really good. It focused around the story of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. Well, in that story, we follow a Belmont, the first Belmont to actually fight Dracula, Trevor. And we go on his adventures with him being the first and really only Belmont to have a party system set up where you could team up with a Seeker, Sypha, a Freedom Fighter, Grant, and Dracula's son himself, Alucard. Well, what they did with the series was that they took that, but they also took in several of the other games too. They wanted to really show that they knew about the lore and the mythology of the series. So, Alucard in the series looks just like he does in Symphony of the Night. Granted, Dracula doesn't look like he does in Symphony of the Night. He kind of looks more like he does, I guess, in another game that I'm not sure of. I don't really remember. And the first season namely focused on Trevor traveling, dealing with BS because of his family ties.
Listen, just forget it. I'll just go.
Now, you're a Belmont. This is all your fault.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Belmonts dealt in black magic. The Belmonts dealt with monsters.
The Belmonts fought monsters, son.
Meeting with Sypha and Alucard and teaming up with them so they could fight Dracula. What does Season 2 have? Well, for one, it's got 4 more episodes. Downside is that the episodes are cut in half. So we have 4 more episodes and they're only 20 minutes long, which I have no problems with as long as they can tell a good story. It doesn't matter how long it is. It can be told in 20 minutes, it can be told in 2 hours, as long as the story is good. And in this season, we don't focus namely on Trevor and crew. We focus namely on Dracula and his side. What we really see is what went on between the year that Dracula gave Wallachia to pray to whatever god they wanted to, or flee if they were terrified enough. We saw him go and collect 2 characters who are also in a game, Hector and Isaac, both of them being Devil Forge Masters. These 2 are the main people in Castlevania's Shadow of Darkness, which stars Hector trying to defeat Isaac before Isaac can resurrect Dracula after the events of 3. And Hector looks exactly like he does in that game. Isaac, for one, he looks completely different, he sounds completely different, and I think he's from a different country than he was in the game. I haven't beaten the game, I haven't played it in so long, I don't remember. But I do know that Hector looks exactly like he does in the game. We're also shown, I believe Carmela is her name. Her attitude in the show is completely different than her attitude in the game. She is very sadistic, cunning, she's a sneaky character, and it's pretty brutal things she does to her fellow vampires. And the one who really experiences the most characterization and most character development is Dracula. You see him as this tired man who just hates everything after what happened. He's depressed because the love of his life is dead. And he spends most of the season just sitting in a study in front of a fireplace with a picture of Lisa next to him. And people come in and talk to him, giving him comfort, giving him ideas, and what he should do and what he feels. And it's pretty interesting to see where it goes. But this can also be a downside, especially towards the end, which I'm not going to speak, but you have to see the season yourself. But Dracula is it's a great characterization. It's great to see him do what he does. It's great to see why he does what he does. And it's great to see these flashbacks of him getting Hector and him getting Isaac and learning more about why he chose them. The parts where we do get Trevor and company, they're hilarious. They're definitely the comic relief. And it also brings up another Belmont, the first Belmont, Leon Belmont, who we see in Harmony of Distance. I think that's what it is. If it's not, the title of the game is right here. Portrait of the game is right here. But he talks about it. We see a portrait of Leon, which I was like, yes, they're really implementing that they know the source material, that there's so much here. We've got about 5 different games going on so far following these characters. And they're colliding it together, and it looks really good, and it feels really good. And you see also more character growth with the protagonist. You see Trevor, he's not drunk at all in this season. He's completely sober, so he's more focused, and he's more sharp, and he's more dangerous in that way. But he's still kind of sarcastic, though, so he's got that sarcastic attitude. Sypha, you really see that she doesn't really like where she is, but she also grows close to Alucard and Trevor. She doesn't like where she is because she's leaving her family, the people she's been with for her whole life. And you also see that she's kind of seeing the error of her people's way, which is, you know, they don't write it down, they commit stuff to memory and they pass the stories on verbally, and she's looking at this Belmont library and like, wow, my people are idiots, we should have been writing this stuff down to begin with because it can get muddled. You know, if first-hand reports passed on through 5 different people, it's like a game of telephone. Someone whispers red pickles in one ear, next thing you know you got Dread Fickle over here. So it can get muffled, it can get changed up, but if you have it written down from first-hand reports, it's strong that way. It's always there, you always have the correct source material. And then Alucard, you find out that he's really more of a teenager in an adult's body because, you know, he's a vampire and vampires grow up really quickly. And you see that he truly does love his father, he aches with his father, but he cannot condone his father's thing, which was barely brought up in the first season because, well, we only saw Alucard for about 20 seconds in the first episode and for a final fight in the season finale, and this one focuses more on him. He's a very quiet, very mysterious kind of person, and through the interactions with Alucard, we see Sypha really grow close to Trevor, which, if you don't really want to be spoiled, I'm going to leave here's a time code right here for you guys to skip because I'm going to start spoiling some stuff. Okay, they're gone. Alright, so I know for a fact as a fan of these games and who follows the lore, Sypha and Trevor do get married and they do have kids. So every Belmont after Trevor, Christopher, Simon, Richter, Julius, any other Belmonts in between, they all have Sypha's seeker blood in them, so they are part magician. Juste really shows that off with his skills because he kind of does do the magic stuff. And you really see that when she talks to Alucard, there's basically nothing there. She screams it, she yells at him, and there's hardly any reaction. He just kind of like acknowledges it, but when she yells at Trevor, there is a bit more of a warm reaction, where he's like, what the hell did I do? Alucard's like, okay, yeah, sure. So she feels like when she's with Trevor, there's more to it. And she grows close to him. And by the end of the season, those two leave together, and it's blatantly brought up that Trevor's like, is this what I'm going to deal with? And she's like, yep, forever. So they've both grown close together, and you know that when everything's said and done, they're going to be having kids. I don't know who their kids are, I just know that their grandchild is Christopher Belmont, who was the star of the Castlevania Game Boy game. Now, the last 2 episodes are really good, and what I really like is that when they get to the castle, the Castlevania theme starts to play, and it's like, oh, this just feels intense, it feels action-packed, and it feels like it's going to be good. I did not like the fact that it did feel rushed at the end. I felt like they could have focused more on the last 2 episodes on the fight with Dracula, but instead they only focused around half the episode of the second to last episode to fighting Dracula, which I was like, there could have been more, but the fight was still fun, it was still great to see, and I understand the way they defeated Dracula, because it was meant to be more of a story-based thing, is like, you feel for this, but it felt like there was too much emotion there and not a lot of everything else. But with this season, it was already announced well beforehand that there was going to be a third season. I don't know what the third season is going to do. I don't know if we're going to stay with Trevor and Sypha. I don't know if we're going to be jumping up to maybe Simon and dealing with Simon's adventure going against Dracula and him getting the curse of defeating Dracula and having to spend time trying to free himself from the curse. Or if we're even going to be introduced to Grant. He was one that I was really disappointed about. He never makes an appearance in the series, and I'm disappointed because he was a freedom fighter, and there's an entire thing where they had to climb up this tower to fight a monster, and when they beat the monster, it turned out to be Grant who was being possessed. So that would have been a great thing to see. We saw Trevor defeat the Stone Cyclops and free Sypha from being turned to stone. We saw him fight Alucard. Both of those things happen in the game, but we don't see the events that lead to him having Grant. I'm guessing they thought not a lot of people used Grant. They namely used Sypha or Alucard, or they just used Trevor because, you know, he's a Belmont and he uses the whip. But still, I would love to see if they're going to continue Season 3 with Sypha and them, that they bring in Grant. And a good interesting, like, kind of factor to that is that Grant was also in love with Sypha too. So it could be a good foil between those three characters, this love triangle that we see. Because, well, Alucard stayed behind to guard the castle as well as guard the Belmont estate that was left behind. Now, what do I think of the series? I love this series. Season 2 is definitely something that really expands on Season 1, and it really just expands on the lore as itself. I'm hoping that with this series, it'll spark some sort of regeneration to bring Castlevania back, maybe remaster Symphony of the Night in a more modern sense. Not 3D, but more graphics are up to date. You can make out some other things more clearly. Maybe they add a couple of bosses, because that game's a big game. It's a huge game, but it's so fun. Maybe they bring in more games. They redo the original games, Castlevanias 1, 2, 3, and Super Castlevania 4, and they bring that up into a more modern sense. They did it with Rondo of Blood. They did make it a bit stiff with Rondo of Blood, but it was still fun. But this is a great series, and the series itself is great. Not just as a TV series, but as a game series. And story-wise, it's really interesting because you get to follow these characters. Now, if you haven't seen the series, I do recommend you check it out. If you haven't played the games, I recommend you check them out. Specifically, the first 3 Castlevania games for the NES, Super Castlevania 4, Castlevania Bloodlines, Symphony of the Night, Rondo of Blood, and the Game Boy game, Aria of Sorrow, as well as the DS game, Dawn of Sorrow. All of these games are super good, super fun, and it's just replayability is like always there. There's always replayability because you just want to do it again and try and be better than before. Now, you have to check out the series. If you don't like the series or the games, that's fine. I recommend you at least give them a chance. It's the same thing I've stated with like the other show, Titans, which I have seen and I'm not disappointed with. I'm just going to diverge just a second there in that Titans is a good show. It's great, it's fine, and I think they're going to be doing a lot more with it, which people stated that they weren't going to like the show, and I'm going to state this right now. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. A couple things here and there, just meh. But on the other hand, it's a good show. Give it a chance. Alright, so quick thing right here is like, I know it's been a while. The new episode of Anime Fight was supposed to come out months ago, but I got preoccupied with the Navy. I'm actually enlisted. I go to boot camp next month, so this is going to be one of, not the, I'm going to try and make sure it's not the last video that I make, but it's going to be a final video for a good while. I'm not saying goodbye. I will be back. My friends Brady and Ryan are going to take over, try their best to post videos or do live streams, but they also have their own lives, their work and everything, but so it's going to be scarce, it's going to be like that, but please give them the benefit of the doubt. They've been part of this YouTube channel for a long time, and I trust them fully. Also, I thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day, good evening, whatever your time zone. Bye-bye.